Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So, in the previous chapter that we just looked at, we looked at dealing with the payroll process. So let's focus on that little section real quick because, yeah. So notice that now that we don't have a paid payroll service, notice how this bottom section is different again. So again, I said that you would have your pay employees and your pay liabilities. Okay, so you still have that, but remember we had the file forms here, and we still had this, but this one is going to be entering time. So again, when we looked at time and billing in chapter 9, we were able to enter in the time, which allows you to keep track of your employees. So again, if you did want to have that as part of your payroll system, you are able to toggle that through the settings. But this time, instead of having your payroll service or a payroll center, it just says turn on or turn off payroll. So if I were to click this is where it tells me, hey, in order to turn on your services, you need to select one of these three options in order to pay for a payroll services. So again, because we don't have it, that's how you can toggle it there. It's just clicking that button. And of course, your employee center is going to look just a little shorter. You don't have that option anymore to have your payroll center. But you still have your information again here. And this is for, again, manual payroll system, okay? Where you're going to be entering in everything manually, calculating everything manually. So, yes. So that is what happens when you don't have a payroll system. All right. So that was chapter 10 and 11. Now we're going to be dealing with chapter 13. And what chapter 13 is going to be is your adjustments and your year-end procedures, okay? So in this chapter, you're going to learn how to do adjustments, which I will tell you what exactly are adjustments, and what are the necessary steps you need to take. Now, what an adjustment is basically anything that you need to wrap up for the rest of the company's year. Okay, so example would be if you need to do an inventory adjustment, that would also go apply here as well. If you need to properly accrue your payroll system, that is considered an adjustment right there. Other things that is often defined as an adjustment would be your depreciation. So if you have assets, fixed assets especially, or if you have intangible assets, you need to depreciate or amortize them. Okay, and that's considered a year-end adjustment or procedures that you need to do to close out your books. So those bad debt, if you need to, toggle that, those are all considered adjustments. Okay. Another one would be supplies expense, right? You purchase supplies, right? The whole purpose of you purchasing supplies is to use them. So once you've used all those your assets, you need to expense them at the end of the period. Okay, and your period is whatever you want to determine, whether it's weekly, daily, bi-weekly, annually, whatever you want to do, as long as it's within 1 year. Okay, so here I've already set up everything, so I'm ready to go. So the very first thing I want to introduce you is going to be the general journal. Now, Mr. Sanchez has been going on around about general journals, and now I told you finally we come to chapter 13, which we're actually going to explore what the general journal is. So the general journal, okay, if you are doing accounting old school, like really old school, the general journal is where you actually record your transactions. Okay, it's where you are doing manual what do you call it? Manual transactions. So for example, right, in QuickBooks, if I were to pay my bill, right, this one eliminates you having to do a manual general journal entry to pay your bill. And this is where the concept of debits and credits come into play. Okay? But in this case, QuickBooks modifies that concept and makes it twice as easy. So when we're entering our information in here, we're entering it as a single entry, as in we're only entering what we know, which is our debit or credit, right? If I'm going to pay my bill, I'm going to debit my liability and I'm going to credit my assets, right? But in this case, I'm just placing in information and QuickBooks is going to do the accounting behind it. But yes, but for most, for QuickBooks, we use the general journal as a way to either recategorize something, either changing the classes, okay, also recognizing any non-cash transactions. So that's why you have to make those adjustments. So again, allowances, anything like that, to either allocate prepaid expenses. So if you have rent, right, normally you have to pay ahead of time, or you sign up a lease for 12 months and you make a down payment, whatever it is, and you pay either every month or it gets expensed every month, right? You need to make that adjustment using the general journal. So it's just basically the purpose of the general journal in QuickBooks is just to transfer money or transfer from one account to another. And that's all you're doing. That's all that you need to know for general journal for the sake of QuickBooks. However, if you guys are going into my accounting class after this, you're going to be looking at the general journal and it's going to take a completely different spin because this is us recording every single transaction. Okay? So that's just a brief introduction of the general journal. So let's go ahead and see how we are able to find it, activate it, whatever you want to call them. Look at our general journal. And it's going to be under company. And it's going to be, we got enter time. I'm in the wrong one. I'm in customers. Company. So it's going to be make general journal right here. Okay? Other than that, I think this is the only way you can make a general journal is through the company menu folder. And then select make general journal here. And then it's going to ask you this thing, and this is just it's just a little box reminding you, what this is. It says in the book to just click do not display this message anymore, and I'm gonna click OK. So if we look at our general journal, it's pretty straightforward. It looks just like a regular form. It looks like a regular spreadsheet that we can enter in information for. Okay? Now, what they highly recommend you to do is to create a separate account called Journal Entries, which is considered a banking. That's going to be under your bank. I don't know why they would categorize it under your bank. It's not technically a bank account because what happens is you're not making any real transactions. You're making basically zero transactions, or $0 transactions, we call it. A non-cash transaction. So again, I don't know why they categorize as journal entries as a bank, but in the book it says you create it so you can see all of your journal entries in one account. So again, if I look at my chart of accounts, I have journal entries, and it will give me a register of all the accounts that I have looked at. So I think for this one, we have the date for, is it January or is it February? We're going to set the date as January 31st, 2019. All right. And then we're going to make sure that we're going to enter in 2019 1. So in this case, I'm going to change that to make it a little more relevant. And then lastly, we're going to be entering in all this information. So let's go ahead and look at the picture below. Okay, so we're going to be entering a journal entry. Okay, that's the very first one because we need to know, we need to know exactly where to place this this transaction. We need a place to locate them. So our first line item is going to be journal entries. Second one's going to be utilities and rent expense, and it's going to be for $25.62. So we need to make this adjustment because we need to pay our utilities, and it's going to come out of our rent expense. So let's go ahead and do that transaction. So again, we want to do it January 31st of 2019. All right, and then we're going to change this again to 2021. All right, just to make sure we're relevant. And then again, so the first account that we're going to have is going to be journal entries. So this is where all the things that we type in our journal is going to go in this one. So again, if you are going to choose a specific date, okay, you want to make sure that depending on when you state that your accounting period is going to be determined what date that you need to make these adjustments for. So these adjustments are at the end of the period. They call it year end. It's the same thing. This happened at the end of the period, okay? All adjustment entries happen at the end of the period. So again, it was for utilities. So we gotta pay for utilities expense. And it's gonna come out of rent expense. All right. And again, this is where you have to be careful. This is where it talks about entering in data, and they have to match 100%. So if I were to write, 2562? If I were to write anything wrong here, let's say I wrote 2526, it will not show me, it will show me discrepancy right here saying, hey, you're off by 36 cents. You need to either allocate it or you need to do something for it. In this case, it won't allow me to just go ahead and process it without having this extra account. But it calculates it for me because this is where the purpose of having debits match your credits come into play. And in this case, it doesn't match, and it's saying, hey, I need another account to fulfill this 36-cent discrepancy. And in this case, I don't have that discrepancy, so I'm going to change it back again to 2562. And then this is going to either be 0 or it should cancel this out actually. And then nothing here as well. Okay. It's supposed to be nothing here. Okay, it won't change it. That's cool. All right, so again, we have journal entries at the top, and we have our numbers. They match 100%. And once we figured out that is what our adjustment is going to be, this is so annoying, then you can go ahead and clear it. Now, oftentimes what you can do too is you can go ahead and write a little memo here, and in this case it says recategorizing expenses. So we want to make sure that we indicate here that we are recategorizing expenses. Okay, so that's all we're doing. We're transferring a specific. We're transferring a small portion amount, and we're taking it from rent expense. Okay. All right, and then let's see. Do we need a name for it or anything like that? Is it billable? Let's see what the book says. All right, so no, we leave the rest of the information blank. Oh, we have to also put that in our journal entry as well. Up here. Recategorizing expenses. Okay, so once everything looks good, we can go ahead and click Save and Close. And it's going to validate that. Okay, so again, if I want to look at it, I can go here and I'd be able to go into journal entries and it will give me a report of what I just entered in just now. Again, you'd be able to do that through the check register as well, because I believe that one has the option because it is considered a bank item. So you'd be able to toggle it through there as well. All right, so here we have our payment for, and then if you want to look at it, you'd be able to tap it and fix the general journal entry if you'd like. Okay. So let's see what else the book lets you know. Okay. Adjusting expense accounts associated with items. So $0 checks. Okay, so this is going to be an example in case you already have a reimbursable payment, or let's say this, instead of writing a general journal, what you can do is you can write $0 checks. Okay. So again, in case you don't want to use the general journal, your second option is to make that adjustment using the $0 checks. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and exit out of everything. And let's go ahead and look at what the book says. So in this case, it says do not perform, but I do want to show you how to do it regardless, but I'm not going to validate it. So again, what is a $0 check? Okay, so again, it's the same thing. When you're trying to move one expense to another, you're going to write a check and it's going to zero out the balance. And how we do that is pretty straightforward. So let's go ahead and look at how we do that. Okay, so step one, you're gonna click. You're going to create a check using the journal entries bank account. Okay, so instead of typing in the general journal entry, you're going to be writing a check using the journal entries. And then we're going to debit the line item. Okay. So let's go ahead and look at the picture below and see what we need to do. We need to look up Mr. Wong and Son, right? They are our third-party vendor. They're the people that are our photographers. So in case you want to zero their expense out, what you're going to do is all right, so let's go ahead. So we're going to write a check for the negative amount of $95. And let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write a check. Okay, so we're going to write a check. We're going to write a check. And then it's going to, at the top of the window, it's going to say, well, do you want it from checking? And I'm going to say, no. I want this check to be from our journal entries. Okay? And it's going to give you this message, and you're just going to click OK. Or you're going to click display it. Do not ever display this message again, and click OK. So again, we are trying to say we've already paid, or we're transferring his expense, which is for him to do a photography service expense, correct? So here's a subcontractor service expense, which in this case, we're going to toggle this and we're going to run it as photographer. Huh, I don't have photographer here. Photographer. That is so strange. Hold on, I don't have photographer. I might have to enter it in or do a quick add. So let me see. So it's going to be photographer and retouching. So I'm going to go ahead and just enter in as a new account. So photographer. And it says yes. Oopsie. Set up. Yes. So I have all this. It's an expense. That's correct. And I'm going to go ahead and click continue. And then it's going to give me this window. I'm just going to go ahead and click save and close. So what I can do here is I can change the amount whenever I want to. So it was for $95, correct? And then I'm going to go ahead and type in retouching. And then it's going to say yes. It is another expense, and I'm going to go ahead and click continue, and then same thing. You're just going to click continue. All right, and this time in this bottom window, I'm going to click I'm going to yes.
I remember Mr. Sanchez making sure we put things as a sub account. So would retouching be a sub account of photographer?
It can be, but this is a separate service.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
And then on top of that, just because we're doing a quick add, you can change and manipulate the actual items later on when we go back and let's say, oh, okay, since I have photographer and I have retouching, I'm going to assign numbers to it. I'm going to do everything accurate so I can go back into my items and I'd be able to edit those information. So in this case, because I did a quick add because for some reason it doesn't have it. Hopefully I am on the right one. I am on the right one, right? Yes, the adjustments chapter for Wong and Son. Yep, I have all the information, but what I'm going to do is here, I'm going to transfer. So instead of actually doing the photographer expense, I'm going to transfer it to, instead of doing the retouching, I'm going to transfer it into the photographer expense. So here I'm writing a $0 check. Okay, I wrote a negative number because I'm transferring it from retouching services and I'm putting it into the photographer's services. Okay, so this is a second way you can actually do your adjustment entries as well. And once I've selected that transaction journal, wait, what? Okay, to review the adjustment. Okay, no, we don't have to do that. But yes, once we validate this, let me see. Nothing here that we need to fill in. Make sure it's for $95, -95, and then make sure that it's the value of 0. All right, so here I'm writing a check for the amount of $0. Perfect. Do we need to toggle any of this information? Just remember that it needs to be January 31st because this is an entry. So good, everything's good. So I can go ahead and save and close. And now my $0 check entry has been submitted. So again, there's ways that you can look at it. You can either look at it via the journal entries, or you can look it up. It says right here that you can look it up using the general ledger. Yeah, on the reports tab, you could select transaction journal under the general ledger. So in case you want to find this transaction again, you can find it through your general journal, journal entries category or register, or you can do it through here where it says through your reports. Okay, actually, let's go ahead and take a look at that. Might as well, we have time. So I'm going to go to reports. Reports, and it says to go to transactions, history, transactions journal. If I click this, I'm going to click OK. And, and I don't see it. So did the message say something? Let me see. The message says you must first highlight a transaction in your report. Oh. Okay, well then. Guess that option doesn't work. But if I were to go to my chart of accounts and I click my journal entries, it should be there. My Wong and Sun entry should be here, which I don't see, or check right here. If I click that, here's my check for my $0 check. Okay. All right. I'm going to close that out now. All right. So that's generally what you got to do when you're trying to transfer from one account to another. It's pretty straightforward. Just making sure that you type in the correct amount because it will calculate for you that something is wrong. Okay, your debits must always match your credits. Now this is going to be saying editing, voiding, and deleting transactions. Again, you can manipulate any information that you have entered because it's based on your own company. But again, QuickBooks and for accounting practices and purposes and procedures, if you're working for a company, you better make sure that you talk to your accountant to see if it's even okay to edit, void, or any of those transactions. Now again, for the sake of our class, yes, we can accidentally, press the enter button, right? Which that is a habit of mine. I tend to accidentally press the enter button because I'm very used to using that. Again, that means I may have forgot some piece of information. I can go back and I can edit it. That is completely valid. The only problem about voiding or deleting transactions is if you void a transaction, right? You need to be careful on what accounts it affects, okay? If you're trying to avoid a paycheck because you wrote the wrong amount or you need to adjust the paycheck, again, make sure that you're okay, that the accountant is okay with that. If not, what oftentimes I've seen before is they give you, they write you a brand new check for the rest of the amount that it's due for, okay? It's very rare that they'll send you a brand new check. And then lastly, we never delete anything, okay? Because we don't want holes in our system, as well as if we ever get audited and for some reason they pull up files and they're like, wait, why are you missing a check here? Why do you have this check? This transaction doesn't make sense. Why are you deleting this transaction? You know, because then it's gonna give you the questions of, are you trying to fraud the company? Are you trying to do something illegal? Are you doing something? Are you manipulating the books? Okay, and yes, so that is why we never delete. Okay, the only person that actually has the I guess the permission to delete would be the accountant. Okay, but again, it's highly recommended that you do not delete your transactions. So here we're just looking at that, and again, it's pretty straightforward how to void a transaction and how to edit the transaction. Again, edit the transaction is pretty easy. You just double click on what the transaction is and fix it from there. Voiding transaction, same thing. If you need to void a check, just understand how to do it. Okay. Yes. So editing transactions. Here we're gonna go ahead and make a change for one of the customers here. So here's the following. From the customer's menu, select create invoice. So we're actually gonna create an invoice and we're gonna edit this information. Okay. So the quantity column is going to be, we're just going to look at the screen here. So we're going to be invoicing Maria Cruz, and we're going to charge her for a premium photo package as well as a outdoor photo session, 3 each. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do that. All right, so again, editing the transaction is pretty straightforward. All right, so again, I'm going to create an invoice. And again, we're going to be writing it out for Cruz Maria. And class, is she San Jose or is she Walnut Creek? She is Walnut Creek. Walnut Creek, and we want to make sure that it's the Academy. Good. I'm going to bill her for the 31st. Okay, that's fine. Items, she had an outdoor photo session. And she also had a premium package. Okay, and it was for 3 each. Okay, and let's say I went ahead and saved it. I accidentally pressed enter. Okay, right? Oh shoot, I forgot to add some information in there. So what you can do is you can either go to the create invoices and you'll be able to click previous. And it will show up your last one that you've entered, but in this case it did not show me the last thing I entered in here. So let me see if I can go back one more. Cruz Maria, here you go. The one I just created right here. Cruz Maria, okay, I can edit my information here. Okay, that's one way. You can actually go to the customer center and look up Cruz Maria. So Cruz Maria, and I'd be able to toggle all of her invoices like this. Okay, so the one that we just entered was, I'm assuming this one, 106, 107, 107. Okay, And let's say I accidentally forgot to toggle this or I forgot to toggle the date. You can change it just like that. So in this case, I'm going to be like, well, I meant to say 2020 107. I don't know. And you'd be able to save the transaction. And it says, well, are you sure you want to save this? You want to say yes. Okay? Pretty straightforward. Or let's say she didn't want that photo session anymore. You'd be able to still toggle it here. And you would be able to change it here. Let's say she got 5 photo sessions instead of 3. Right? So she got 5 photo sessions instead of 3. Yes, you can toggle it here. Save. I was going to say, you sure you want to change this? Yes. So here I got the beep of approval. If I were to look at the invoice again, it'd just be for a new amount. Okay? All right. So you can edit anything. It's pretty straightforward. You just go ahead and double click and just change the information. Not hard at all. Okay? So let's see what else is in here. Okay, so voiding transactions, again, it's pretty straight. It's the same. It's the same more or less. To do it, is it voiding and deleting? It's voiding and deleting. So for QuickBooks, it's actually so I'm gonna go ahead and view transaction history, view journal. I can edit the transaction. Here, let's go ahead and edit the transaction, see if I can void it there. Okay, so I can delete the invoice if I wanted to, which we don't highly recommend. You can void the invoice right here. So if I were to void the invoice, meaning like this never happened, I can go ahead and click void invoice and it should recognize that for me. And then when I close this information, right, if I close this window and I'm in and I say yes, right, it's going to validate that I voided this transaction. It's going to show up right here that it's been voided. Okay, this invoice 107 has been voided. And it should yes, so that means yes, because we void this transaction, everything's zeroed out and that person doesn't owe you that money anymore. So you still have the invoice again because it's, you've already created it, but this time you're voiding it. So this is what you could do when you're canceling on an order. You could just void it. Again, you just go to edit and void. There is no button at the top where you can void it, and you cannot right click it to do that. Okay. Again, but you have to go through the edit the invoice first. Like you have to right click and then click edit the transaction and then edit and void it there. Okay. So again, you can do it for any bill, any payment, any invoice, any purchase order, all of those. You can void, edit, and you can delete, but we just don't recommend it. All right, let's see what else we have here. All right, deleting all transactions is a no-no. Again, we do not delete our transactions. However, what you can do is when you decide to close your company, what you can do is, let's say I want to keep all my information, I want to keep all my forms, and I want to keep all my vendors and everything. Instead of deleting the information, what you're going to do is you're going to go to File, and you're going to go to Utilities, and you're going to you can either copy the file, or you can select condensed data. And what that's going to do is it's going to delete everything that you've inputted in there, but it's going to keep your centers and your registers. Okay, so this is what happens usually at the end of the period when you need to get rid of your expenses and your accounts, right? So if it keeps all your registers, it's going to keep your assets, liabilities, and equity the same. The only thing that it's going to clear out as far as data is going to be your expenses and your income, because again, when we start a new period, you generally want to start at zero for your expenses and your income. They're your temporary accounts. You need to close them out. So that's what that's what you can do, is to condense the data. Again, everything's going to be deleted or removed except for your registers, your centers, and I think that's it. So yeah, you get to keep those two things, your registers and your centers. So that means all your contact information is going to be there, because centers mean employee centers, vendor centers, customer centers. They're all going to be there. And then your registers. So any asset, liability, and equity, they're all going to still be there. Okay? So that's also something that you should definitely know. So again, you never want to actually delete them all like that. You want to be smart about it and condense the data, and it's just going to clear out everything. Okay? So that is how you delete all your transactions in one shot. All right. Now, let's see. What page are we on? We are on page 8 out of 20. Okay. So I'm just going to introduce this last section right here, which is going to be memorized transaction. So for example, a good transaction that you can memorize would be something like making a payment to, or not making a payment. What do you call it? Yes, let's say you have to make a payment to rent. You can memorize that check, or memorize that bill, or memorize that invoice. So then, or not invoice, I'm sorry. Memorize that payment. So then every single month, instead of, it's not going to do it for you. It's not going to be like, it's not going to be that option where it will automatically pull out your bank. It's just going to remind you, hey, you have this bill coming up. It's for the same amount. And what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that that you pay it on time, but also it's just going to populate the same check over and over again for the same amount over and over again. So it says right here, you can memorize journal entries, invoices, sales receipts, bills, and other transactions. Okay, so make sure that you know that. So yeah. So in case for Katie, since she's salary, she's going to always get the same amount every single paycheck. You can memorize her paycheck. So then every time you pay her, it's automatically going to fill in that information for you. But then again, it's also like, when you're doing the payroll process, it's no matter what it is, you're still going to have to either edit it for any reason. But you can memorize those kind of paychecks. Yes, you can. All right. So if I were to do that again, for example, this bill, I'm going to pull it up from Sinclair Insurance. So let's go ahead and go to our vendor center. Okay. So vendor center. And I'm going to look up Sinclair Insurance, SS Sinclair Insurance, and I'm going to look at all of my transactions. Okay, oopsies. And I got none. Wow. I think I have to create one. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new bill. So I'm going to click bills. And I'm going to go ahead. So the minute I write Sinclair Insurance, it should populate all this information. Okay. And then I'm going to make sure that I put insurance expense here. And once I've done that, I need to fill in how much insurance's expense is for every single. So it's $600. It's $600 payment. Okay, and I'm gonna assume that this is every month. Yes, monthly insurance payment is going to be the memo here. So it's for $600. So here, monthly insurance payments. And it's for, I put it up here. Amount $600. And I'm gonna say they charge you every first of the month. Okay. So I'm gonna say February 1st. Okay. I'm gonna look at the information, make sure it looks all good. So we know that it's going to be insurance expense, and it's going to be for the amount of $600, and we know that it's a monthly payment. Is there a location that we have to specify? No. So what we're going to do is, if you look at the top, you have the little button right here that says memorize. Okay? If I were to click that, this window is going to pop up saying, okay, so you want to memorize this bill, this insurance bill that you always are going to receive. And yes, I am. Am I going to call it Sinclair Insurance? No, I'm going to call it monthly insurance. Okay? And then you can either add a reminder, or you can not have it reminded, but you can automate the transaction entry, as in like every time you type in Sinclair, it's going to pull up the information for you automatically. So that's what you can do. Or you can add a reminder to the reminder list, so it tells you that you need to pay this bill every month. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and click OK, and it took a picture of it, so that means every time I type in Sinclair, all this information is gonna pop up saying your stuff is due on the 1st. It's a monthly payment, insurance payment, and it's going to be for $600. So every single time you enter in Sinclair Insurance, it will populate all that information. So again, we're going to stop here for today. It is 11:40. Do you guys have any questions about this particular portion? If